what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at our front sensor here on the front. What I'm going to do is I want to use some Ruin Fang steel by Citadel. Using any kind of paintbrush, what we want to do is just paint inside where we're going to put our clear part. So it's just a nice bit of silver just on the inside, just so that, you know, you've got kind of like a nice silvery sort of see-through reflection part when it comes to seeing through the clear parts, right, which is kind of what you kind of see on the real thing. However, one of the it's sort of like a dome shaped clear part that we're going to put on here. Let's push that out of the way a second. It's a dome shape, just as you can see. Now what I've done, I've put it on a cocktail stick, bit of blue tack, just so as we can now spray this, because this actual clear part, if you look at reference photos, looks very, very tinted. So what I'm using is I poured in a colour cup, X19 Smoke by Tomcat. Let's get a quick kitchen paper towel down. Right, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to lightly now spray this to smoke, just to give it that realistic look that you've got on the real thing. Now the cool thing about using this smoke by Tomcat is it really does have a very nice glossy transparent look to it, which gives you a very nice kind of tinted clear parts. I mean, you can apparently use this with for tinting like F-16s and that sort of thing. I haven't actually done that before, but I will get around to it in the future. But this is kind of like the basic principle. I think you can either spray it or you can dip it, and it gives you this nice tinted sort of clear glass kind of thing going on, which hopefully, as you can see, I mean, that still maybe needs another coat or two, but that now is starting to tint up quite nicely. So I'm just going to maybe kind of tint this up even more, because it really is mega tinted on the actual real thing. Right then, just sprayed this up, and that is now looking very kind of dark tinted, and that's going to dry quite nice and glossy, just the way we want it. But because it's kind of like a glossy type paint, it's going to take a bit of time to dry. So let's just put that to one side for a bit, and what we're going to end up doing is simply just gluing it on the end here. But the other kind of glass piece on here, we can use the plastic parts that come with the kit, which is our P7 just here, and we can just slot that in one of those holes. Well, what would be your right side, you can put it in there. But what we're going to do, nice little technique using some micro crystal clear, and what we want to do is just get ourselves a nice little cocktail stick, right, and we just want to dip the cocktail stick just in here like so, and then what we can do is just put this cocktail stick in this little hole here, very carefully kind of get it sort of nicely filled, but then very carefully pull out the cocktail stick. So hopefully what you can see there is all this white. Let's hold on, let's kind of maybe, I want to just carefully not break the model and sort of show you on camera. Let's just bring you out a second. Hopefully you're seeing that in one of those holes it's all white, and that is the crystal clear has filled that nicely. And what's going to happen is give it a nice amount of time to dry, and that crystal clear will dry as it says on the label, crystal clear like glass, and that will look a lot better than actually coming along and cutting off these tiny little clear parts, gluing them in, potentially getting glue marks on there, when that will absolutely dry beautifully crystal clear, perfectly all around where it needs to be, and that is a lot better. And then when we come along and put on our nice glue on our nice little sensor there, lens, well, that is going to look really nice. So now we're virtually coming to the end here. I mean, we're just down to some last little pieces. I've got to get our exhaust done, so I'm going to set up for that. What we're going to look at now, we're going to look at doing that nice green tinted front glass bit. Now to do this, we want to use Tamiya's X-25. Again, same as the smoke reel. It's a nice gloss, very transparent paint. And what we want to do, we want to get a bit of this, like so, and then we want to get a little bit of Tamiya thinners. One sec, I've lost my pipette. So with a pipette, we can just get a bit of our Tamiya thinners here, put in like one part of our palette here, and we'll mix them up in a bit. We'll bring them together. So what we're going to do, get a bit of our Tamiya thinners, and we just want this even more transparent than it actually is. Alright, so actually what's on the end of the paintbrush seems to be doing the job quite nicely. And we just want to make sure that's looking good. I think that's probably as green as we want to go. Now this is a bit tricky because, I mean, you don't want to cock up on this, trust me. You want to get this the way you want it. So we want to get our paintbrush sort of really, I mean, to go as transparent as you possibly can, because we can put another coat on top of this if we want. So that's looking kind of quite sort of nice and transparent there. Maybe a little, yeah, maybe a bit more. That's looking not too bad. Alright, so what we want to do now is very carefully, not touching out any of the sides, we just want to put a nice quick paint job of this very carefully, very quickly, because the longer we mess about, the more chance this has of drying, the more chance it has of drying, the more you're going to get brush strokes and it's going to look a bit off. Now you can't really see that mega well on camera. Right, but maybe what we could do is come along and give that maybe one more coat, and that should be good. But we don't want to go nuts, okay? We don't want to have this mega green, mega in your face, because if you look at reference photos, it depends upon what angle you're looking at the actual real 1:1 scale aircraft. Depends on how green it looks. So you don't want to have it green in your face green at every single angle you look at. I think a nice sort of light green tinge to it, just to kind of get that realism that it is green, but we don't want it too in your face, so every angle you look at it, it's gonna be really green. So I think one more kind of green coat on that, and that should actually be quite good. Right, I'll put a second coat on that now, and it's starting to get that nice kind of green sort of tinge to it, but it's still not maybe as noticeable as I'd like it, so I think we're going to need a third coat. So I'm just going to now paint this again with a third coat. One thing I forgot to mention as well is you don't want it pooling up, right? Because if you let it pool up, you're going to have certain parts of the glass looking greener than the other. So what we want to do is make it a nice glaze, a nice filter, a nice film all over that one glass area. So if you get any pooling up areas, just kind of wipe your brush off, make it sort of nice and dry, and what you can do is you can just soak up any pooled up areas that you don't want. Now after that third coat, I think that, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but that is starting to look a nice shade of green, and it's just, we've got to go light. I mean, we've got to kind of build this up slowly, because as I say, I think you can actually ruin this if you kind of come in too green, too quick, and it can just look too over the top, too in your face. But I think now I'm just drying this off, because I mean it's going to look different wet to when it's dry, and that's looking quite dry. And I think that has now got just a nice light green sort of tinge to it, and it is almost kind of, depending on what kind of light you get it in, it can actually look a little bit greener than it is. So actually I'm quite happy with that. You know, you go as green as you like, but I'm kind of going with the personal preference of just have this kind of quite nice and light, so that there's something there but maybe not too in your face, because I think it can be overdone, that little technique. We're now going to look at a little bit of painting just to start bringing this to almost a complete end. What we want to do is do our navigation lights. Now for these you've got two good colours by Tammy. You've got the X27 clear red and X25 clear green. Great colours, just like the smoke X19 that we just used. They're really good for doing indicator lights and navigation lights and all these kind of things, because they've got a nice, well, basically they give you this nice transparent glossy kind of colour going on. So what we can do is, I'm going to be using green, sorry, give it a good shake. We want to get a bit of Tamiya thinners, get it in a pipette like so. We just need a bit on a palette, and we just want to thin it down a bit, because I mean it is quite thick, and what I want is I want a bit of a capillary action going on. Right, so because we want it a bit thinner, it does also mean we might have to do one or two coats. So I'm kind of almost mixing it a bit 50-50, just giving us something that's going to have a bit of flow to it. Alright, so let's bring you in even more. And what we want is just to kind of colour in this navigation light, but without actually having to kind of paint it completely. I don't know if you can see that, but I've just kind of tapped that, almost like a pin wash again. I've just tapped it and it flows. So it actually, the capillary action is doing the work for us. I'm just tapping this, I'm not painting it, just doing a nice kind of a pin style type wash, and that has now virtually kind of coloured that in for us. Really nice, going up to all to those edges, making it look like a nice professional paint job. Now you may want to put one more coat onto that. I think I will put one more, and that should be all good then. What we can also do is, where we're going to put some clear parts, hold on, let's get it on camera, where we're going to put clear parts like another navigation light here, what we can do is, we don't need that capillary action, so what we can do is just go straight in to the actual pot neat, and then just paint a little bit inside. We don't need to paint it all, right? We want to kind of create an illusion that there's like a sort of like a little kind of green bulb in there, you know, and you don't need to, because I mean what's going to happen is we're going to now put on our clear part. So I'm just putting that out the way. We've got our clear part just here, just off camera. I'll get my plier, some cutters, and what we're going to do, we're going to find piece 13. And this is where things get really delicate, and there's no kind of real sort of, shall we say, a cool tip, but really it's just a case of really trying to get this tiny little piece and just trim up what we've just, you know, that little bit of the tab that's left from cutting that off the sprue, which is quite tricky, quite delicate. You've got to be very careful, because these things will just shoot off like there's no tomorrow. And now that's kind of sort of trimmed up sort of nice, what we want to do is just very carefully just see how well that's fitting. And you might have to turn it around, because it might not fit one way but it might fit the other, like this one has just. So what we want to do now is get a little bit of I'm using cement S here, And what we're going to do is just put a little dab on there, just so that when we put this little tiny piece on now, it's going to have something to bite to, just to keep it into place just slightly. And then what I like to do, I like to kind of, while it's got that little bit of welding glue going on, we can sort of just play with it, get it lightly in position the way we want it. And then if you just put a little tiny little kind of pin it with a bit of your Mr. Cement S, you'll actually see it flow bang into all that clear part there. And we can just maybe slightly push it a little bit more, maybe, to make sure it's nicely in position. Don't play with it too much, because it's going to ooze, and all that green paint's going to kind of ooze out and it's going to look all bad. And what happens there is, you probably can't see, but it has gone, hold on, let's get something white under there. You can probably see from the camera there, that's kind of gone a little bit green, and that is because of that bit of green paint we've put in there. It kind of makes the whole sort of clear part look green, which is what we're after. And it's probably better if you see the red one on the other side, really. Let's bring this around, because you can probably see it on a lot better with the red. Just trying to maneuver this without breaking my pitot tube. There, I think you can probably see that. That has glowed up, it's almost glowing up kind of red, because we put that little bit of paint actually on the model, but we haven't actually painted the clear part. Right, so that's a nice little technique there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go around and get all our little navigation lights done here. And to be honest with you, I think the last final thing to do to this is get our exhausts done, and some potentially maybe some remove before flight tags. I thought I'd just throw in a quick little tip, because we've been doing some painting here, and that's how to kind of like clean your brushes. Now this is by the Masters. It's a brush cleaner and preserver. It's really good. I think I paid, I don't know, the £6 or £8 mark. I mean, you can search for it on eBay, stuff like that. Kind of, it's not sort of like a modelling thing, so it's something you'd probably go to art supplies for. But the way it works is, because I mean, if you've brought these Winsor & Newton Series 7 paintbrushes, you want to take care of them. So what we can do is we can just clean them in our pot of water to start with, but water's only going to get it clean so far, and it's not really going to preserve it. So with a bit of water, what we can do is just start cleaning in this kind of pot of soap. And what you want to do is, you don't want to, when cleaning, is make the bristles go in the opposite direction and bend them, because if you do that, you're going to mess up the bristles. So you want to kind of clean it in circles, but you don't want to be bending your bristles all the way back. Right, so I've just kind of give that a bit of a cleaning there, and you can use the back of the hand. I mean, I use the back of my hand, and we just kind of clean it on the back of my hand like so. Maybe bring you in a bit closer. And what you might notice is, because I've been using that green paint that we was just using, that has got a bit of a green kind of tinge to it, from this kind of white soap that's going on. So it is kind of cleaning the stuff out of there. And then I like to just pinch the end of the brush and kind of just pull out any of this kind of foamy stuff that you've brought out. Then clean it in with some water. And then what you can do is just simply keep repeating the process until the foamy white stuff off this soapy kind of brush cleaner turns real nice and white, and you're not getting any kind of colours off this at all then. Because what you want to do, you want to work it as much as you can, not actually on the end of the bristles, but actually where the bristles go into the paintbrush, because that is where your brushes are going to get damaged the quickest, is when all that paint dries inside where the bristles go into the paintbrush. And again, we just kind of wipe that, and that's all looking nice and clean and white now. So what we can do, last little quick kind of sort of flicker into the water just to kind of clean it off. And what we do is we just try and get as much water out as possible. Now it doesn't matter if you clean it at this point with the water loads. Now I say this because it's okay to leave a little bit of this soapy stuff actually on the brush, on the bristles, because it is a preserver and it will help preserve it. Now at this stage you can use your fingers to maybe make the point again, but I like to use my lips, because I really do think it gives you a nice point by using your lips, you know, and that saliva will help kind of keep that point, which is what you want to do, is keep the point. Then we can put our guard on like so, and that paintbrush is all going to be nicely cleaned and preserved for the next time.